Hello, and welcome to Establishing Authority as a Parent. Uh, I have affectionately named this program Who's in the Driver's Seat because sometimes as a parent, I have actually found myself wondering this very thing. So, the first thing that I need you to do is, even though you are watching this as a recording, I do ask that you sign in. So, please scan the QR code there at the top or type the link address into your web browser and just fill out the short 3 question form so that I know that you have been here and that you have viewed our video. So, just know also that this QR code is going to be available on every slide or on most slides until you get toward the end. And then that way you can sign in anytime during the session. So this material was purchased for us with federal program money, and we bought it from a company called Practical Parent Education. And Practical Parent Education has put a lot of research and time and money into creating these materials, and they have actually turned out top notch. So, although I am a parent right now, I have adult children. I am also a grandmother raising a granddaughter. And these tips and tools that I'm going to share with you today have come in particularly handy now. And I wish that I had known them and had these tools under my belt back in the day when my own children were small. So, inevitably, whether we're talking about my children back in the day or we're talking about the granddaughter that I'm raising right now, um, I find myself wondering what is going on. Why does she think she is driving the car? And who does she think she is? And um, who died and left her the boss? These are all things that I think from time to time, just because she's a teenager and she definitely pushes the boundaries on a regular basis. Uh, but on any given day, we might be the family in the little red car where we're just bebopping along and I'm driving and she's listening to music or we're talking about the music and everything is hunky dory. And then there are the days where she is like the new driver and she's going to be in control of the car and the house and the neighborhood and the school and everybody she comes in contact with. So then occasionally we find ourselves in the situation like you see in the little picture on the lower left-hand side, which is Susie and Hobbs from the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon strip. And they've gotten into a screaming match. And I'm sad to say that there are times when we just get into a screaming match. But as the adult, then I have to find a way to step back and say, this isn't working. Let's take a timeout and we'll get back together later and finish talking about what we need to talk about. But there are also days where I feel kind of helpless, like somebody is just pulling my puppet strings and I am not in control. And it's on those days that I do have to think back about some of the things that I've learned about parenting over the years, and I have to try to use some of those skills. And if it's been a while since I used them, then sometimes they're kind of hard to remember. So, one thing I want you to remember as we go through this presentation is that nobody's calling you a bad parent. Just because you chose to watch this video doesn't make you a bad parent. Actually, it makes you a good parent because something's not working and you're looking for some ways to fix it. Um, Also, I just want you to know that the feelings that I just described about what goes in my family are not limited to my family. And every family on the face of the earth probably goes through some of these emotions and experiences at one time or another. Um, What's different for you is that you're not in this alone. We're here together. We're going to learn some things together. Hopefully you'll learn some new tips and tools. And then if you hear about something that you're already doing, then I want you to feel good about that, because you're like, oh, I was on the right track there. Or that is a good thing to do. Now I'm glad to know that. So just remember, we're here for you, to support you, and to help you when you need help. So let's go ahead and we'll get started and move along. Remember, if you haven't signed in, use the QR code to sign in. And I hope that you actually learn a couple of new things today. And if you do, then your time today will be well spent. So take a look at this quote. Read it to yourself, and then I'm going to read it out loud. This was said by a former probation officer, and I'm sure that he has worked with many troubled children over the years, and that this insight um, has come to him after meeting with many children and many families. So he says, power belongs to those who use it, and if parents don't, their kids will. Would you agree or disagree with that? I have to admit, I agree with it. And I've seen it firsthand, not just in our own family, but excuse me, but I've also seen it in classrooms. Brand new teachers often don't have a good handle on classroom management. And so, um, without a process for setting rules and norms within the classroom, then children will take advantage of that. And even if they know what they're supposed to do, they won't follow those rules because the teacher is not enforcing them. So the teacher is needing to be and the parents are both needing to be leaders with their groups of kids. And it doesn't matter if you have one or if you have 22. Um, if the adult doesn't take the leadership role in the group, children definitely will. Remember that reflection is a powerful tool here, and throughout our time together, we are going to stop and reflect a little bit on our own parenting. If you ever need to, you can stop the recording and pause and think about it. You might want to take some notes. Just remember, this is a safe zone, and there's no judgment here. I certainly am not going to be the one who judges you and calls you a bad parent and kicks you out of HEB. So just rest assured that is not going to happen. So today we have several objectives to accomplish, and one of them is to learn that it is important to have a balance of authority within the family. And I apologize for that chime. I have tried to turn it off, and it will not turn off. So hopefully you can just learn to tune it out, because that's what I've had to do. The second objective that we're going to be working on today is considering a viewpoint that admits that the testing of limits is a basic law of human nature. So when children push the boundaries, that is a normal part of growing up. And then we want to consider the idea that the key to successful discipline is successful leadership. And so that is a different perspective, and I want to share that with you today. And then we also want to recognize that there are common staging areas where children challenge our authority as a parent. And you're going to recognize all of these. I'm positive of that. And it's just good to know that these are possible areas where challenges might occur. And so then if you know about them, you can be better prepared for them. And then we'll also be sharing some tools for establishing or reestablishing appropriate boundaries of power within the family. So just like we said, it is natural for children to test the limits. It's important to keep this in mind so that when your children do push your buttons and they test the limits, uh, as you can see in these two pictures, that this is a learning experience for them, and this is how they learn what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And what's also important here is how you respond to it. Um, just think about this. There is a difference between control and power. So you might have heard someone say about another parent, not about you, of course, but about another parent, oh, that person needs to get control of their kids. I hate screaming kids in the grocery store, blah, blah, blah. Or that kid needs a swift kick in the pants, something like that. Well, um, other people aren't walking in your shoes right then and there, and they don't know that your child might have just been pushing the boundaries a little bit, and you stop them in their tracks, and they don't like that. The kids don't like that, and so then that's why you see this crying kid in the grocery store buggy, or this parent over here who's locking eyes with their child. So just keep in mind that outsiders don't know what's going on inside your family. So when we talk about control versus power, it is very important to um, know the difference between the two. And this was actually something that I learned when I was preparing for this, and that is that the synonyms for control in the thesaurus are restrain and force, manage, and constrain, while the synonyms in the thesaurus for power are strength, energy, capable, and authority. So I hope you can tell that the synonyms for control pretty much have a negative connotation, but the synonyms for power have a much more positive um, connotation. And so this brings us to the concept that our goal in parenting really isn't to control our children, but to help them learn self control. So if you have young children in our district, then you might have heard the teachers talk about conscious discipline strategies, and they may have shared some that you could use at home. And so you might have um, heard someday your child might come in, and if you're frustrated or whatever, they might say, you need to be a balloon. And you know what that means is that you need to take a deep breath and then let it out. And that just kind of helps you, uh, gives you an instant calming feeling. And sometimes it releases that negative energy that you might be feeling. So um, it's something that your child would have learned in school, and then they've brought it home to teach it to you. But if they say be a balloon, then you might not know what they're talking about. That comes from conscious discipline. So the goal of conscious discipline is for teachers to help students learn how to self-regulate their feelings and their emotions, and how to respond better when challenging circumstances come along. So there's that question again, who's in the driver's seat? But I want you to think about this. How does the parent feel? How do you feel as the parent when the child is in the driver's seat? How do you feel as a parent when the child is in the driver's seat? And then we're going to talk about, on the flip side, how does the child feel when the child is in the driver's seat? Those are thought-provoking questions. Let's see what the experts have to say. When the child is in the driver's seat, the parent might feel scared, out of control, helpless, vulnerable, and angry. And the child, um, maybe a little different from what you might expect, the child might feel some of those very same things. scared, insecure, reckless, aggressive, and they might have little regard for other people. Well, this was kind of a surprise to me that that's how children would feel, because I would have thought the child would be, they would feel like the winner, like they had beat the parent, that that they would feel in control. But really, instead of feeling in control, they feel like they don't have those boundaries that keep them safe, and they feel like, oh wow, I'm in control now. What do I do? So I don't know. Sometimes when the child is in the driver's seat, it means that the parent might be unable, for whatever reason, to be in the driver's seat. So then the child might feel um, scared or alone. And it all depends on what's going on in the family for you to really know how the child might feel. But when the parent is in the driver's seat, it's much different. The parent is going to feel like they're in charge, and that's good. That's how life is supposed to be. I'm the parent, I'm in charge. And I feel safe because I'm not being intimidated or threatened or um, manipulated by my child. I feel confident that I can do the job of parenting. I'm relaxed and I'm calm, and life is good pretty much. And the child is going to have similar feelings. They feel safe and secure. They are more likely to trust their parent because their parent is setting boundaries, and the parent is keeping the child safe. And that means that they're free to be a child. They don't have to take on any unreasonable expectations of being the adult in the family. And so um, that's a good feeling for a child. So really, when the parent's in the driver's seat, that's the best of both worlds. When the parent's not in the driver's seat, though, sometimes a little game of tug of war might ensue. And if we were meeting in person, we might actually have a little demonstration of what tug of war looks like. But now we just need to focus on some pictures. So take a look at the picture in the lower left-hand side of the slide. You can see that this family is having a friendly family game of tug of war. They're smiling, they're playing, they're doing their best to win. And, this is the kind of thing that I can imagine that families might have done when schools and places of business were shut down for COVID. They ran out of things to do and they got tired of playing on their phones. So then they started coming up with better activities. And tug of war might have been one that they did. And I think that's great. Um, but then when you compare that to the picture on the lower left-hand side, you can obviously see a little more tension in this family who is playing tug of war. They're not really playing a game. There's a lot of tension. You can see in the thought bubble at the top that there is someone working on the computer. And what we don't know is maybe the child is playing video games and the father needs to do his work. Or maybe the father is working and the child wants to be able to play their video games. And so then it's my turn. No, it's my turn. Well, there's no taking turns because I'm the father and I have to work. So you don't get to. And there's this push and pull and push and pull that goes on forever. And sometimes in tug of war, um, really nobody wins. There's no such thing as being the winner. Hurtful words are said that really can't be taken back once they have been voiced. And um, tug of war or a lack of parental authority can actually have a very destructive dynamic between parents and children. And nobody, like I said, nobody really wins. There's no compromise. And in the end, it can end up pulling the family completely apart. So most child specialists agree that young infants cannot be spoiled and they're too young to be manipulative. However, what we do know is that it doesn't take long for even very young children to begin to learn the skill of manipulation. I'll tell you a quick story. My son would cry and cry and cry. And, he learned early on that when he cried, he was the firstborn. So when he cried, then someone would go and pick him up. And if you didn't go and pick him up or see what was wrong with him, then he would get so mad that he would hold his breath till he turned blue in the face. Well, I was a new mother. I raced out to the doctor's office and I'm like, he's having seizures. I don't know what's the matter with him. And lo and behold, the doctor said, you know what? He's trying to get his way. He wants you to come pick him up. And you haven't been picking him up. You're just letting him be. And so he just cries and cries. And he is doing this on purpose. Mind you, he was under 2 when he was doing this. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? He's having a temper tantrum. And the doctor said, yes, ma'am. So we go to so I tell everybody in the family, the doctor says he's having temper tantrums. So don't be surprised if we just don't run, go pick him up. So sure enough, here we are at a family event. And he's in the middle of the floor. It's kind of like we had a conversation pit and everybody was talking and he was on the floor in the middle. And so he started crying or whatever, and he had plenty of toys. I knew he was dry. He wasn't hungry. And so I said, I know it's annoying, but please just let him cry. And he cried and he cried and he cried. And then he held his breath and he turned blue in the face right in front of the whole family, which of course I'm dying the whole time because I'm wishing he were not doing that. And so my mother-in-law just jumps up and snatches him up in there and says, you have I am so sorry. Your parents are so bad. They're just letting you cry. And she's picking him up and patting him on the back and holding him close. And he is sniffling and calming down. And I'm like, no, don't pick him up. We're trying to make him stop doing that. Well, the rest of the story is a little crazy because my mother-in-law overreacted to that. And then there was a whole nother issue. So needless to say, the family event was over. But all that to say that even very young children learn how to manipulate the adults around them, and they do it until it stops working. So that's the thing, is that when you have a tug of war, there's really no one in a leadership position to take control of the situation and de-escalate it. So when we have a problem like this, even at work, we have to ask ourselves, what is the problem? What is the root problem that we need to dig deeper into finding, and what can we do? What can we change about what we're doing to get a different result? So usually the problem is inconsistent and ineffective parental discipline. Okay, now remember, I said this is a safe place and nobody's pointing fingers. Okay, children didn't come with a owner's manual, and so we're all doing the best we can with what we have. But now that we know there might be a different way, we really do have to figure out what we're doing wrong and then how to change it. That's what effective leaders do. Effective leaders will usually generate respect from the people in their groups and their teams. But what effective leaders will establish well-defined guidelines. People know what are expected of them, and they provide positive reinforcement and follow up. So if your child knows what is expected of them, and then you praise them when they do it and they do it correctly, then they're more likely to feel really good inside, and they'll build that intrinsic good feeling. And so it's not like you have to give them stickers and keep a sticker board, but it's more like, patting them on the back and telling them they did a good job. So my granddaughter, she's 14, and so her chore is every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, she's responsible for cleaning up the kitchen after dinner without being told to. And so whenever she does it, then we try to say, hey, thank you for cleaning the kitchen. I really appreciate that. I didn't have to tell you. You did it all by yourself. And so that makes her feel good. She's like, thank you. And so, or you're welcome. However, we have to be really careful because sometimes the way that she cleans the kitchen is not the way we would like for it to be cleaned. And so rather than messing up that positive moment where we've praised her for cleaning the kitchen without being told to, then at another moment in time, maybe the next time, we might say, before you clean the kitchen, let me just show you how I prefer that the dishwasher is loaded. Or don't forget that when you clean off the counters after you're done taking care of the dishes, then make sure that you dry it off with a paper towel. So do that ahead of time. That way she knows what our expectations are, and then she's more likely to follow them. And then we can say, hey, thank you so much. What a great job. You cleaned the kitchen without being told to, and you did it the way we asked us to. And so now we're building that positive reinforcement. It is so much more effective than going along behind them and saying, I knew you'd never remember to clean the kitchen. Or um, look at this. Who taught you to load a dishwasher that way? Or, uh, geez, you forgot to wipe off the counter, and now I put my notes down on the counter and they're ruined. So remember, the positive reinforcement is going to be much more impactful than the negative one. And the positive reinforcement will help you reach your goals in the family, whereas the negative reinforcement will not. So let's talk about the dynamics of control. So, how do children manage to tip the scales of control in their direction? Well, I'll tell you one thing my granddaughter is really good at. It's nagging. She just goes on and on. Lala, can we do this? That's what she calls me, Lala. Lala, can you do that? Lala, are you ready to go? We have to go now. Lala, Lala, can I do this? Lala, can I do that? Lala, it's like a 4-year-old in the grocery store. Can I have these chips? Can I have these chocolate? Can I have this gum? And I get to the point where I have to say, if what you're about to say begins with the 2 words, can I, then don't say it. Just don't say it, because I get tired of all that nagging. And then, and I'm sure that similar situations happen to you with your children. And but there are other things to consider. So when are parents more vulnerable? So I can guarantee you that my granddaughter will wait until a point when she thinks I'm just so busy that I'm going to say, I don't care, go ahead, do what you want to. Um, an example of that might be in the morning when I'm getting ready for work. And because I do a lot of work before I even go to work, and you're probably the same way. There's making sure that my granddaughter's up and moving. And then I have to fix breakfast for my father in law. Our 91-year-old father in law lives with us as well. And so I have to make breakfast for him before I leave so that he can eat when he gets up. And then sometimes I put dinner in the crock pot. And sometimes I make my own lunch to bring to work. And so by the time I get to work, I'm kind of tired already. So if sometimes she will try to interrupt and ask for something in the middle of all that. And I'm just like, what? Yes, fine, whatever. And then I get back to what I'm doing. And so I have to try and be on the lookout for those things so that I don't agree to something that I'll regret later. And then the question comes up, well, how can we avoid power struggles? Because, that's what a tug of war is. It's a power struggle. And somebody on each end of the rope has to be in control. So how do we avoid those? Well, first of all, You cannot let yourself get into an argument. And there are times when I just tell Tatum, you ask a question. Oh, and I said her name. I shouldn't have said her name. Um, Sweetheart, you asked a question and I answered it. And that's all there is. End of discussion. I'm not going to argue about this with you. And then sometimes I have to remember to choose my battles carefully. So there are things that she asked to do that um, I just have to ask myself, is this a battle I'm going to die on today? Is this a hill I'm going to die on today? Sometimes arguing over the little things is just not even worth it. So if it's a little thing, then sometimes I just I don't even argue. And I try always to respond calmly and firmly. And if I can explain myself, then I do, because she will always follow up but why? And so you can see there are several other things, but one thing that's really important is to be consistent with enforcing rules and consequences. So, um, if this rule has a consequence today, that consequence should stand every day. And it's not like, oh, it's a holiday from school, who cares? If it's a rule, it's a rule. So you have to stick with that rule and be very consistent. And then sometimes I have to say, sweetheart, I understand what you want. Let me think about that and get back to you. Because sometimes I have been guilty of giving a quick answer because at first, at, at the first thought of it, it seems like it's not such a bad idea and everything should be fine. But then I go downstairs and I talk to my husband and I'm like, oh, I should have said no. And then I have to go back upstairs and say, oh, you know what? I'm so sorry to do this to you. I know you're not going to like it, but I said yes and I should have said no. And here's why. This one is really important too. Stop being so concerned with proving that you're right. My father-in-law has a little bit of dementia going on, and so he will say, "Why are all the lights in the house on?" And we'll say, "They're not on. I don't know what you're talking about." He says, "Yes, they are. I can see them. That light's on and that light's on. It's really bright." And so instead of, you know, proving to him that we're right and all the lights actually are on, then we ask him, so um, would you like the lights on or off? And then we fix it for him, because trying to get him to admit that he was wrong, or my husband, not letting go, he wants to be right. That can go on forever, and that's not healthy. So we just um, have to give up on being right sometimes. And then being empathetic is always important. I hate to tell you no that you can't go to the mall today, but you do have that project that is due on Monday. And so you have to get that done before you get to go to the mall. So I'm really sorry you don't get to go to the mall, but that's how it is. So these are some things that are tried and true that I have learned about over time and that were included with the materials. And so I'm happy to share these with you, because these are things that I did not think about and I had not learned about when my children were little, but they're very helpful now that I am raising my granddaughter. So one thing that we talked about in the previous session of practical parent education was what kind of family system do you have? And so that begs us to wonder, what kind of parenting style do you use? Now, I'm just going to say that we're going to talk about 4 or 5 parenting styles, and I am not advocating for one or the other. All I would like for you to do is use that powerful tool of reflection and say, huh, that sounds like me, or that sounds like me. And then when we look at how it impacts children, ask yourself this question: is that what I want my child? is that what I want to happen to my child? Is that the effect that my parenting is going to have on my child? And is that the intended outcome? And if it's yes, then that's great. But if it's not, then I would suggest that you think about incorporating some pieces of another parenting style that does have the desired outcome. So remember, reflection is a powerful tool. And I'm not by any means saying that any one of these styles is better than the other, but there are some outcomes that I think that are better than the other. So um, we're not going to spend too much time on these, but we are going to go over them a little bit just because I want you to think about this because it really plays into um, how you're going to establish or reestablish authority in the family. So the first one is authoritarian. And we're just going to go ahead to the next slide. So in the authoritarian parenting style, the parents are very power oriented, and that's how they discipline. It's my way or the highway. And these parents try to shape their child's behavior based on the basis of their greater strength. So in a nutshell, that just means that they're trying to make their child do what they want to do by intimidating them. And then these parents are often controlling and rigid. And that's why the symbol, and this could come from insecurity of their own. This is why the authoritarian parent is symbolized by the rock, because rocks are hard and rigid and they don't change. The rock is a rock. So what does this do to the child? Then it often makes them rebellious, or on the flip side, submissive. They can become distrustful because their parents' responses are very predictable, and the child knows if they do something wrong, they're going to be in terrible trouble, and so they don't trust their parent to discipline them appropriately. And then it might, because we live what we learn, we learn what we live, then if the parent uses power to maintain control of the house, then the child might try to do that with their peers. They might be manipulative and sneaky. And so the authoritarian parent is often symbolized by the rock. Then there's the permissive parent, who's symbolized by the marshmallow. And so I bet you can imagine what these behaviors are like. Parents who have a marshmallow style often try to be their child's friend instead of their parent. They often are reacting to being parented too rigidly themselves. So if my parent was a rock, then maybe I think for my whole childhood, I'm never going to be like that. I'm never going to be like that. So when then they grow up and they have kids, then they're like, of course you can do that. Yes, let's go shopping. Yes, you can do whatever you want. Here, let me buy you a new car, that kind of thing. So parents who are permissive really never say no. Sometimes these parents are permissive by, what is the word? Absence. They're just too busy or distracted, and they don't set reasonable guidelines and boundaries for their children. And then sometimes they substitute material things. I'm sorry, I'm going to be working out of town during open house, but I'll bring you this really cool toy from my job. And they, of course, we talked about this. They have few rules and guidelines, and they're very inconsistent. And they feel sorry for the child, and they give in to the child, and they do too much for the child, and they rescue the child. And to me, a lot of this is similar to being an enabler. So instead of teaching your child to be independent and self-sufficient and confident, then because you're just giving in to everything, you're doing too much for them, then they'll always expect you to do too much for them, and they won't do things for themselves. So some children with permissive parents will be insecure. They look for boundaries. They don't show respect for authority because basically in their house they are the authority. They have very little self-control because they haven't been shown how to be in control, and they're quite self-indulging. It's all about me. If nobody's going to tell me what I can do, then I'm going to decide what I want to do and I'm going to do it. And they really don't understand cause and effect. So if the parent is always coming to their rescue, then if I do this and it goes badly, then my parent will fix it. So then they don't ever really realize or feel the effect of natural consequences. These children can be manipulated. And so when you do say no, when the permissive parent does say no, then the child might try to make you feel guilty and they try to manipulate you. These children can be very irresponsible because they've never been taught how to be responsible. Now, this next um, parenting style is called the uninvolved parent, and it is symbolized by a bubble. And I think that the bubble, to me, says that these people with this parenting style are like the bubble because when you touch it, it disappears. So these parents are not present in their child's life. They might be physically present, but they're working too much. Or they might be physically present, but they're very ill. So there are a lot of reasons for parents to be uninvolved. They could be uninvolved because they've developed some bad habits, and so they just leave the child alone to raise themselves. But let's look at the parental behaviors for the uninvolved parents. These parents have very few rules and guidelines, just like the permissive one. The ones they do have are inconsistent. And in this case, the child often takes over being the role of the parent. And so instead of the parent taking care of the child is taking care of the parent. The parent is absent either physically or um, emotionally, and they are just emotionally unavailable. They don't have any expectations for their kids. And there's very little structure in the house. The parents don't engage with the child. And there's a risk of being little or no attachment between the parent and the child. And attachment and bonding of parents and children is what we're going to talk about in our next session. That'll be in February 24th, and I'll tell you more about that later. But when a parent is uninvolved, then children often don't believe that their parents love them. And this is a critical issue with uninvolved parents. The children feel secure and they look for structure. And so they may find structure in undesirable places. And so this can be a very bad outcome for children. They're immature socially and emotionally. They have difficulty getting along with their peers, and they don't respect other people because they've never been taught to. And they also have difficulty adjusting to structure and rules. So that means that if the child has been in control and in an uninvolved household, then when they do go to school where there is lots of structure and rules, then the child may have a very difficult time adjusting to their new environment. They have little self-control. They don't know how to share. Um, they're irresponsible and often disorganized, and they do sometimes have a high rate of antisocial behaviors. These children are at risk of being a victim of abuse or neglect, and their peers might become their major role models. So just imagine what happens if they're hanging around the wrong people. And they may appear to have independence, but most of the time that's just a front. Next, we come to the authoritative parent. And the authoritative parent is firm but loving. They set clear boundaries and follow through with appropriate consequences. They respect themselves and their child. They're confident, flexible, and all of these things really are positive parental behaviors. And so, as you might expect, then the predictions for the child are that the child is also going to be confident. They're going to feel safe and secure. They will have respect for themselves and for others because that's what they've been taught. That's what's been modeled in their home, as is responsibility and self discipline. And they do learn intrinsic motivation. And overall, they're just happier children. The authoritative parent is symbolized by a tennis ball because a tennis ball is firm, but if you squeeze it, it does bend. It's not like a rock. If you squeeze a rock, it doesn't change. If you squeeze a tennis ball, it will change. It's bouncy. It can be fun. The authoritative parents um, can have a lot of positive effects on children. Now, there's one that we didn't talk about in our first practical parent education session, and that is the democratic style of parenting. So, in this style, all the parents are equal. All the members are equal. So, the children and the parents all seem to share the same rights and privileges. And children don't see the parents as as an authority figure. And so that means that when they go to school, they don't have this prior training. And so when they get to another environment where there are rules or regulations, then they rebel against them, and it doesn't end nicely. And often children and parents get locked in power struggles. You can think about the democratic style as um, as two people rolling balls back and forth between themselves. So no one is really being the leader. If you have one ball, they roll it back and forth. There's no problem. Nobody has to stand up and take a leadership role. If you add another ball in, then fine. You have the same thing. Everybody is doing the same thing. They're expected to do the same thing, and they get the same results. But if you start putting in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 balls, then things get chaotic, and then everybody's up in arms. So a democratic style is very detrimental because nobody takes a leadership role, and it is the parent's responsibility to be the leader in the family. So remember, we talked about those places where you're most vulnerable. So here's a list of some of those places, and I'm sure that there are more, but everybody knows the bedtime scenario. Little kids have a 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock bedtime, and they suddenly need a drink of water. Then they have to go to the bathroom. Can't we please just read one more story? And then, I'm not tired. Can I just stay up with you for a little bit longer? Or I'm scared. Won't you stay in my room with me? So, this can be a very frustrating time for parents. It's late. You're often tired at the end of the day, and the kid just isn't wanting to go to bed. And so, um, this can be one of those hotbeds. Dinner time, whether you're at home or you're out in public eating dinner. You know, well, I don't like broccoli. You can't make me eat broccoli. I'm not going to eat the broccoli. It's like that commercial I've seen on TV lately where the kid says, "Well, we'll be here all night then," because nobody gets to leave the table until she eats her broccoli. Well, there's a way around that. You can say, hey, you know what? Tonight we're having broccoli and green beans. So if you don't want to eat the broccoli, then you need to eat the green beans. So they have a choice, and you've avoided a confrontation. Uh, Potty training, oh, I don't even want to talk about that. And then homework and the morning routines, like I already talked about. And then, of course, I hear this a lot. but everybody else is going to the concert by themselves. Why can't I go to the concert by myself? Mm, yes, that's been a fun conversation lately. And it seems like they will always ask for or pull their stunts in public places because they know you don't want to be embarrassed and you're not going to correct them. And or if you have company in the house, it's the same kind of thing. So we're all familiar with these places where we might get into power struggles with our children. Now, keep in mind that all of these things are going to be affected by extenuating circumstances. Parents could be ill. There could be a developmental delay in the child's growth. This slide talks about goodness of fit. So, is my temperament a good temperament to be combined with my granddaughter's or not? So that's the goodness of fit. And then, the well-being of the parent. Like I said, if you're really, really sick and you have been sick for a long time, then that will affect your parenting style, and kids know that. When you're under time pressure, or if parents can't agree on a parenting style, that's a really big deal. Guilt or insecurity on the part of the parent. And I worried. I had this problem when my granddaughter first came to live with us. At first, I liked saying yes. All I could ever tell her dad and my daughter were, no, I can't afford it. No, 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 you can't go there because I can't pick you up. No, no, no. So now when our granddaughter first came to live with us, then I felt guilty about always having to tell them no, and so I wanted to be able to tell her yes more, and I did, and I had to back off on that because really that's is setting a precedence for always saying yes, and I knew I couldn't be in that position. Um, and sometimes, yes, you can love your children too much, uh, and that will turn into enabling them rather than parenting them. So again, I want you to think about, what is your parenting style? Is it the rock, the authoritarian, the permissive marshmallow, the uninvolved bubble, or the authoritative tennis ball, or the democratic ping pong ball? As much as we don't want to believe it, um, as parents, sometimes we do give up authority. And this is because either A, we don't have clear or consistent rules and consequences in the house, or we have the rules and the consequences stated, but then we don't follow through. And so both of those are unhealthy um, things that will cause the balance of authority in your home to tip over. So when you do have rules, it tells your children that you love them enough to care about what they do and how they're going to turn out. Um, it tells them what's acceptable and unacceptable, and that they have choices. Yes, you can choose not to do your homework, but then you will also have to live with the consequences of that. Um, and there is a predictable cause and effect relationship between your behavior and um, what you are allowed to do and not allowed to do. And it means that your parents love you. And I have recently had to have this conversation with Tatum, with my granddaughter, because there's another relative that in the family that has a very permissive parent, and and I won't go into the gory details, but I had to say, it's really unfortunate for her, the relative, that nobody loves her enough or cares enough about her to set these rules for her, because that's not going to work out well for her in the end. I said, we have these rules for you because we do love you and we do not want you to be bad off later on down the road. And then in order for your rules to be effective, they have to be firm. They have to um, treat everyone involved with respect and dignity. And this is so important. It has to be, I love you. You are my daughter or my granddaughter, but I don't like your behavior. So you're not being punished for who you are. You're not facing consequences for who you are, but you're facing consequences because of what you did. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person, but there do have to be consequences for inappropriate behavior. So set rules that are appropriate, establish rules that you can and will enforce. This is really important because if you say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did A, B, and C, you're going to be grounded for the rest of your life. Well, you can't really enforce that. I hate to tell you that. Um, so that can't be your consequence. Rules have to be stated very clearly, and then um, parents and caregivers have to follow through with the rules. And sometimes it's hard, but just remember these are your quick tips for making rules. Make sure that the rules reflect what is important to you and your family. Um, Health and safety come first. And I can always tell my granddaughter, you know, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to go to the mall for 4 hours all by yourself because that's not safe for you at this age. So, no, I will have to go with you. State what you want clearly and firmly. For instance, I want all of your devices turned off or put away when you start your homework. Um, you know, we're all smart people. We've been around the block a few times and we know that issues are going to come up. So if you are going to work with your spouse or your partner um, about an issue, here's the rule. I know it's coming up. They're going to ask this. And so let's think about this ahead of time so we know how we're going to answer when she asks. And then be prepared to enforce all of the rules that are set. And, sometimes it's hard because if our granddaughter is grounded, then we feel grounded too. um, and then number 5, consider the needs of everyone in the family. And this was just a general statement that the company had put in here, but my husband actually does have to get up at 4:30 so he can be at work by 6 o'clock. And so that means, at 9 o'clock, um, the our granddaughter who lives right above us, whose bedroom is right above us, she has to have quiet feet. She needs to have her TV turned down. Um, that's just how it is at our house because, Poppy goes to work early and he's going to need to get his rest. So make sure that you um, show him some respect and follow these rules. You can expect resistance, but be consistent. And then when situations change, be willing to change the rules. So a 7 o'clock bedtime might be great when the child is 4, but at 14, it's not so much. So as the child grows and ages, then the rules and the consequences are also going to have to change along the way. Whew. That's a lot of information for one day. And I hope that you realize that in order to grow and develop your skills as a parent, it takes growth. And it means that you have to think about what you've been doing. You have to decide if it's been working for you and if it's having the desired outcome. It might mean having to change the way that you think about things and make changes in your strategies. You might have to step back and uh, toss out the old goals and write some new goals because um, as I said, as children grow up, then their rules and consequences have to change. Well, their goals are going to change too. So, um, being flexible and agile as a parent is very important. And here's something that we all have to learn. If it's not working, then let it go. Because in the end, if you continue doing what doesn't work, then you're going to get frustrated. Your children are going to be frustrated, and no one is going to be successful. Now, notice that the QR code at the bottom is different. Instead of it saying, please scan the QR code to complete the sign-in sheet, now it says to complete the exit ticket. So I do want to give you a few minutes or a heads up so you can be doing this while I wrap up with some housekeeping items. But go ahead and scan that and fill out our exit ticket. So that way we'll know what we can do differently. And it also helps us know if the platform that we're using and the scheduling that we're using is working or not, and when would be a better time or place to do things. So I always think back after I've attended a workshop and I think, what did they say about this or that? And so I have created a folder for you, and it's going to have the quick tips that I shared with you, as well as some other ones available in English and Spanish. And then there are a couple of handouts that you might really appreciate. One that I think is very helpful is setting and sticking to the rules. And then it's always important to know the difference between enabling your child and empowering your child, because we do want to set our children up for success so that they have the power within themselves to achieve their own personal goals for their life, rather than enabling them and doing everything for them so that when they are out on their own, they can't make it. So some of these resources are really just going to help you look inward and ask yourself, am I being the kind of parent that I really want to be? And if not, what do I need to do to change it? So coming up in Parent Academy, we have quite a few events coming up. We have a family engagement website, and the link is here. And when you get to the website, then you can click on Parent Academy, and it will take you to our homepage for Parent Academy. The calendar of our events there, uh, you can find those easily by clicking on the tab at the menu at the top of the page. And then you will see the things that are coming up all the way through May. Know that this is a living calendar, and so things might change. And so if we say that there's going to be a family fun day on a Saturday in April, just know that as you get closer to April, you need to go back and check the calendar again to be sure that nothing has changed. Now, our next practical parent engagement or practical parent education event is going to be on February 24th. And this is on the topic this time is attachment and bonding between parent and child. I hope that you'll come and be part of that. And if you can't, that you will be able to watch the recording afterward. Don't forget that we really do need you to scan the QR code and let us know that you were here and how we can do things better in the future. If you don't have the ability to scan the QR code, then the link is spelled out here for you, so you can actually just type it into your web browser. There is my name, my email address, and my telephone number at the office. Remember, my name is Kelly Rawl, and our family engagement department and team is here to support all of the families in HEB, and it is what we love to do. And so we're ready and waiting. So if your family is needing support in one form or another, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If we don't have any answers for you, then we can connect you with the right people who can help you. And so I do appreciate your time with us today. And I want you to know that we are available to help you. And we have more great Parent Academy sessions coming up in the future. And we hope to see you there. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your week and a great rest of your school year. We'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you again. Goodbye.